Turn around. The command cut through the noise of emergency radios, airport alarms, and hurried voices like a blade through fog. Jack Miller stopped beside the rescue truck, his work shirt streaked with soot, his dark brown hair damp against his forehead, his breathing controlled despite the smoke still drifting across the runway behind him. Less than 3 minutes earlier, he had helped Ashley Reed out of a disabled corporate jet, while airport emergency crews secured the aircraft. Now the 28-year-old chief executive officer sat beneath a medical blanket 50 feet away, shaken but alert, watching the maintenance technician who had somehow known exactly where to go when everyone else had been searching for answers. "Sir, we need this area clear," an airport officer said. The older man ignored him. Marine General Thomas Caldwell stood perfectly still, staring at Jack as though the past had stepped out of a locked room and walked directly toward him. "I said turn around." Jack slowly faced him. Caldwell's color disappeared. For several seconds, neither man spoke. The afternoon wind carried the sharp smell of scorched wiring across the tarmac. Emergency lights flashed against the polished fuselage. Somewhere beyond the perimeter, a turbine wound down with a long metallic whine. Then Caldwell whispered one word. "Miller." Jack's jaw tightened. "Not here, General." Caldwell took one step closer. His eyes moved over Jack's face, searching for 12 missing years. "Jack Miller." "Yes, sir." "That is impossible." Richard Cole, Reed Aerospace's operations director, approached with 2 members of airport management. He looked from Caldwell to Jack and gave an uneasy laugh. "General, there must be some confusion. Miller is one of the contract maintenance technicians." Caldwell did not look at Richard. "No, I assure you. I know my own personnel." Caldwell finally turned toward him. "Then you do not know this man." The words quieted everyone within earshot. Jack lowered his gaze, not embarrassed, not proud, simply tired. He had spent years avoiding exactly this moment. No medals on the wall. No photographs in uniform. No stories for strangers. At home, his 8-year-old daughter Emma knew only that her father fixed airplanes, made pancakes on Sundays, and never missed her school concerts. That life had been enough. It was supposed to remain enough. Ashley rose carefully and handed the medical blanket back to a responder. "General Caldwell, you know him?" Caldwell stared at Jack again. "I knew a man with that name." Jack's voice stayed low. "Let it go, sir. I watched your file get sealed." Caldwell paused. "Then I was told you were gone." Richard's expression changed. Ashley stepped closer. "Gone where?" Jack did not answer. Instead, he looked back toward the jet. Through the thinning smoke, a maintenance panel near the rear fuselage remained open. Something inside had caught his attention during the rescue. Something he had not seen in 12 years and had prayed never to see again. Caldwell followed his gaze. "What is it?" Jack reached into his pocket and unfolded a small piece of paper. On it, he had written a serial number from a component inside the aircraft. Caldwell read the numbers. His face went pale for the second time. "Where did you see this?" "Inside her jet." "That cannot be." "I know." Ashley looked between them. "Would somebody please tell me what is happening?" Caldwell barely seemed to hear her. His eyes remained fixed on the serial number. Jack spoke quietly. "Before you ask who I used to be, General, find out who put that component on a civilian aircraft." The wind lifted smoke across the runway again, briefly hiding the jet from view. Caldwell folded the paper once and looked at Jack with something deeper than recognition. It was fear. 36 hours earlier, Jack Miller had been nothing more than a single father packing his daughter's lunch before another ordinary shift at the airport. 36 hours earlier, Jack Miller stood in the kitchen of his small 2-bedroom apartment, trying to convince an 8-year-old girl that blueberries counted as a reasonable compromise. 3. Emma folded her arms. 5. 4. And you eat the eggs. She narrowed her eyes with theatrical suspicion. "Deal." Jack smiled and dropped 4 blueberries beside her pancakes. Morning sunlight filtered through inexpensive blinds, catching the steam from his coffee and the faded photographs taped to the refrigerator. To anyone passing the window, Jack was simply a 32-year-old father preparing breakfast before work. That was exactly how he wanted it. His dark work shirt hung over the back of a chair. His steel-toed boots waited by the door. Nothing in the apartment suggested that 12 years earlier, men like General Caldwell had known his name. Emma pointed toward a photograph of Jack holding her when she was a baby. "You look tired." "I was tired." "You still look tired." "Thank you for your honesty." She giggled. 20 minutes later, Jack dropped her at school, waited until she disappeared through the front doors, then drove his aging pickup 9 miles to Westbridge Regional Airport. By 7:45, he was beneath the wing of a Gulfstream-style corporate jet owned by Reed Aerospace. Toolbox opened beside him. The morning smelled of jet fuel, cold concrete, and coffee from the maintenance office. Jack placed one hand against an access panel and listened, not to the engine itself, to the vibration beneath it. "You hear that?" asked Luis Ramirez, another technician. Jack nodded. "Electrical cooling assembly. Sounds normal to me." "It is almost normal." Luis smiled. "That sounds like something only you would say." Jack removed the panel and inspected the mounting points. One fastener showed unusual heat discoloration. A wiring bundle nearby had been replaced recently, but the routing did not match the configuration Jack expected. He frowned. "Who serviced this last?" "Outside contractor in Dallas." Jack reached for the maintenance log. Richard Cole appeared before he could finish reading it. "Miller, why is that panel open?" "I found an abnormal vibration. The aircraft passed inspection yesterday." "I know." "Then close it." Jack looked up calmly. "I want 30 minutes. Richard checked his watch. "You have 10. 10 is not enough. The Reed executive team arrives tomorrow. This jet is scheduled for demonstration and departure. I am not grounding a multi-million-dollar aircraft because you heard a noise." Jack stood. He was taller than Richard, broader too, but his voice remained level. "I did not ask you to ground it. I asked for time to inspect it." Richard exhaled impatiently. "You are a contract technician, Jack. Do your job." "This is my job." For a moment, neither man moved. Then Richard walked away. Luis waited until he was gone. "You ever get tired of that?" Jack returned to the panel. Getting tired does not make the airplane safer. He documented the vibration, photographed the wiring, and submitted a written safety recommendation requesting a full inspection before flight. Then he noticed something behind the newer wiring harness. A small metal plate, partly hidden beneath insulation. Jack wiped away dust with his thumb. The marking was unfamiliar at first. Then his hand stopped. A narrow eagle emblem had been stamped beside a series of numbers. Jack stared at it for several seconds. Luis noticed his expression. "What?" Jack quietly replaced the insulation. "Nothing yet." "You have seen that symbol before?" Jack closed the panel without answering. 12 years had passed since he had last seen that mark on an aircraft system, and according to every official record he knew, every component carrying it had been removed from service and destroyed. Jack picked up his toolbox. For the first time that morning, the ordinary life he had built no longer felt safely separated from the one he had left behind. By late afternoon, Jack had filed the same safety recommendation twice. The second submission included photographs, temperature readings, and a request that the aircraft remain on the ground until the electrical cooling assembly could be fully inspected. Richard Cole rejected it within 11 minutes. Operational review completed, the message read, "No grounding action required." Jack stared at the screen, then printed a copy and folded it into his toolbox. He had learned long ago that truth did not become less true because someone with a larger office refused to hear it. The next morning, 3 black SUVs stopped outside the Reed Aerospace hangar. Ashley Reed stepped from the center vehicle with 2 executives behind her. At 28, the blonde chief executive officer carried herself with the calm precision of someone accustomed to schedules measured in minutes and decisions measured in millions of dollars. Richard met her before she reached the hangar. "Everything is ready." Jack heard him from beneath the jet. He stood and wiped his hands on a shop towel. Ashley noticed the open access panel. "Apparently not everything." Richard smiled. "Routine maintenance." Jack said nothing. Ashley walked closer. "Can it fly?" "Yes, ma'am." "Then what is the problem?" Jack met her eyes. "You asked if it can fly. You did not ask if it should." Richard's smile vanished. Ashley studied Jack for a moment. "Explain." "Abnormal vibration in the electrical cooling assembly. Heat discoloration near a mounting point. Replacement wiring that does not match the expected configuration. I recommended a full inspection." Richard interrupted. "And engineering reviewed it." Jack looked at him. "Engineering reviewed my report. They did not inspect the component." Silence settled beneath the wing. Ashley turned to Richard. "Is that true?" "There is no evidence of an unsafe condition." "That was not my question." Richard hesitated. "Yes." Ashley looked back at Jack. For the first time, she seemed to see more than a work shirt and toolbox. How long do you need? 30 minutes to know whether I need longer. Take 30. Richard stepped toward her. Ashley, General Caldwell arrives this afternoon. Delaying the demonstration could affect the defense partnership meeting. Jack's eyes shifted at the name. Caldwell. He had not heard it spoken this close in years. Ashley noticed. You know the general? No, ma'am. The answer came too quickly. Jack returned to the panel. Behind the wiring harness, he photographed the eagle emblem and serial plate. Then he carefully traced the replacement assembly to a manufacturer code. His expression tightened. The code belonged to Reed Aerospace. That is impossible, Louise murmured beside him. Why? Because Reed did not build military systems 12 years ago. Jack looked toward Ashley across the hangar. Maybe they did not build it. He checked the acquisition number attached to the code. Reed Aerospace had purchased the design through a small technology company 11 years earlier. The original owner was listed only as Northstar Flight Systems. Jack knew that name. It had been a classified procurement shell attached to the program he had served in. That was the first twist. The component had not somehow survived destruction and wandered into civilian service. Someone had legally transferred the underlying technology after the military program was supposedly erased. Jack enlarged an old inspection stamp on his photograph. Two initials appeared beneath the faded eagle, D.R. He froze. 12 years earlier, only one civilian engineer on Jack's team had signed inspections that way. David Reed. Ashley's last name suddenly felt heavier. Jack looked across the hangar again. She was speaking with Richard, unaware that a man sharing her name had once stood beside Jack in a place neither of them was supposed to discuss. Ashley caught Jack staring. Something wrong. Jack locked his phone. I need more time. You have it. As she turned away, a leather folder beneath her arm slipped open. A photograph nearly fell out before she caught it. Jack saw only a corner. A younger Ashley beside an older man wearing a Reed Aerospace jacket. On the man's wrist was a faded red aviation band Jack remembered from his old team. Jack said nothing, but he understood one thing now. The aircraft was not the only part of his past that had returned. Jack got his 30 minutes. He needed 12. The deeper he traced the electrical cooling assembly, the less he liked what he found. The replacement component itself appeared functional, but its installation depended on a control sequence designed for a different aircraft architecture. Under ordinary conditions, nothing would happen. Under the wrong combination of electrical demand and auxiliary power, the system could overheat and force an automatic shutdown. Jack photographed every connection and submitted a third recommendation. Ground it until engineering verifies the integration, he told Richard. We already delayed the demonstration. Then delay it again. You are making conclusions outside your authority. I am documenting a condition inside my responsibility. Richard lowered his voice. Do you understand what is riding on today? Jack closed his toolbox. People. Richard stared at him, then walked away. An hour later, Ashley approached Jack near the maintenance office. Richard says the aircraft has been cleared for a ground demonstration only. By whom? Corporate engineering. Did they inspect it? Ashley hesitated. Jack already had his answer. I am not asking you to trust me because I wear a work shirt, he said. I am asking you to make them verify the system. Ashley studied him. You really believe something is wrong? Yes, ma'am. Then why did you tell me yesterday it could fly? Because machines can function right up until the moment a hidden problem matters. Ashley looked toward the jet. No flight. Ground systems only. That is safer. Not safe. Jack shook his head. Safer. 20 minutes later, Ashley boarded with two technical executives to observe the cabin systems while the aircraft remained parked. Jack stood nearly 80 feet away with Luis when he heard the auxiliary unit change pitch. His head lifted immediately. Shut it down. Luis looked at him. What? Now. Jack grabbed his radio. Maintenance to cockpit. Shut down auxiliary power. Static answered. Then a warning tone sounded from the aircraft. Ground personnel moved back as a thin ribbon of smoke appeared near the rear service section. Airport emergency crews were already being called. Jack did not run toward the jet. He studied it. Wind direction. Open service door. Electrical isolation points. Fueling equipment had already been removed. Where is Ashley? He asked. Richard appeared, pale and confused. The other two executives came out. She went back for the acquisition documents. Jack stared at him. She went back inside. She thought she had time. Jack took the aircraft diagram from the emergency cabinet and pointed to the rear electrical zone. Tell responders the main cabin aisle may be blocked by smoke. Forward service access remains clear if the battery isolation holds. Jack, wait for the fire crew. They are coming from the south station. I can guide them faster from the access side. He moved with 2 airport emergency employees toward the forward service area, staying within their instructions while explaining the system layout. Smoke drifted above the fuselage, dark enough to hide the tail for seconds at a time. Through the open forward door, Jack called, "Ashley." A faint answer came from inside. "Here. Follow my voice. Stay low and keep moving forward. I cannot see the door. You do not need to. Listen to me." Jack remained near the accessible entry while an emergency responder moved inside along the clear path. Seconds later, Ashley appeared through the haze with the responder beside her. Jack reached out, steadied her as she crossed the final step, and helped guide her toward the waiting medical team. "Everybody else out?" he asked. Ashley coughed once and nodded. "Yes." Only then did Jack turn back toward the aircraft. Near the open maintenance section, partially visible beneath the panel he had inspected earlier, the serial plate reflected an emergency light. Jack stepped close enough to read it from the safe perimeter and wrote the number on a scrap of paper. He knew those digits. He had seen them 12 years earlier on a system that official records said had been destroyed. A convoy was approaching from the airport entrance. At its center was a government vehicle carrying General Thomas Caldwell. Jack folded the paper into his pocket. Behind him, Ashley called his name, but Jack barely heard her. The past had just arrived at the gate. General Thomas Caldwell stepped onto the tarmac, expecting a routine aerospace partnership meeting, and found emergency lights reflecting across a disabled jet. His attention moved from the aircraft to Ashley, then stopped on Jack. "Turn around." Jack closed his eyes for half a second. He knew that voice. When he faced Caldwell, the general went pale. "Miller." "Not here, General." "Jack Miller." "Yes, sir." Richard Cole approached quickly. "General, he is a contract maintenance technician." Caldwell looked at Richard with quiet disbelief. "No, that is what he does now." Ashley, still wrapped in a medical blanket, stepped closer. "What did he do before?" Jack answered first. "Nothing that matters today." Caldwell stared at him. "You disappeared 12 years ago. I left. Your file was sealed. Months later, I was told you were gone." Jack's expression did not change. "You were told what somebody wanted you to believe." The words landed heavily. Caldwell lowered his voice. "Why did you never contact me?" Jack glanced toward Ashley and the emergency crews. "Because I had a life to build." Then he remembered the paper in his pocket. "There is something you need to see." Jack unfolded the serial number. Caldwell read it once. Then again. Whatever surprise had come from seeing Jack was replaced by something colder. "Where did you find this?" "Rear electrical section." "On that aircraft?" "Yes, sir." Caldwell looked toward the jet. "That component was destroyed 12 years ago." Jack shook his head. "No, sir. We were told it was." Ashley stepped between them. "What component?" Caldwell hesitated. Jack did not. "An electrical control assembly derived from an experimental aviation program. Military. Originally." Ashley looked toward Richard. "Why is it on my aircraft?" Richard raised both hands. Reed Aerospace acquired several legacy technologies through legitimate purchases. I do not know the history of every component." Jack watched him carefully. "North Star Flight Systems." Richard's eyes flickered. Barely a second, but Jack saw it. Caldwell saw it too. "You know that name?" the general asked. "Only from acquisition records." Jack pulled out his phone and showed Caldwell the photograph from the maintenance panel. The faded eagle emblem appeared above the serial plate. Caldwell enlarged the image. Beneath it were 2 initials. DR. His face changed again. "David Reed." Ashley froze. "My father." Nobody answered immediately. The wind moved gently across the runway, carrying the fading smell of overheated wiring. Ashley looked at Jack. "You knew my father?" Jack's voice became quieter. "I knew an engineer named David Reed. That was him. I did not know until yesterday." Caldwell turned sharply toward Jack. "You never knew?" "No, he talked about you for years." Jack frowned. "About me?" Caldwell stopped himself. "That conversation can wait." Jack understood from the general's expression that it could not. Richard tried to redirect them. "We should allow investigators to determine what happened before drawing conclusions." Jack nodded. "Agreed." Richard seemed relieved until Jack continued. "Start with my 3 safety reports. Ashley turned toward him. 3. 3. Richard said nothing. And preserve every maintenance record, Jack added. Nobody edits anything. Caldwell studied Jack with the faintest trace of the respect he had once shown a much younger man. Still giving orders, Miller? No, sir. Just protecting the truth. Ashley looked from Jack to the aircraft and finally to Richard. For the first time, the hierarchy around her seemed meaningless. The man with the smallest title had warned them 3 times. The people with authority had chosen convenience. Caldwell handed Jack back the paper. There is something else you should know about North Star. Jack waited. That program did not end because the technology failed. Caldwell's eyes moved toward Richard. It ended because someone tried to bury what your team discovered. Jack's jaw tightened. 12 years earlier, he had believed walking away would close that chapter forever. Now the same technology had appeared on a civilian jet. David Reed's initials were attached to it, and Ashley Reed was standing 10 feet away asking questions her own company might not want answered. By sunset, federal investigators had secured the aircraft. Reed Aerospace had suspended every demonstration flight using the same electrical assembly, and Jack wanted only one thing. He wanted to pick up Emma. You are leaving? Ashley asked as he closed his toolbox. My daughter gets out of after-school care at 6. Jack, General Caldwell, is waiting. He can wait 15 minutes. Caldwell, standing nearby, almost smiled. Go get your daughter, Miller. 40 minutes later, Jack returned with Emma beside him, her purple backpack bouncing against her shoulders. She looked at Caldwell's uniform, then at her father. Dad, do you know a general? Apparently. Were you in trouble? Caldwell laughed quietly. Your father was usually the reason other people got out of trouble. Jack gave him a warning look. General. Understood. Ashley watched the exchange from across the hangar. For hours she had been trying to understand the man who had recognized a hidden aircraft system, challenged her operations director, helped guide her to safety, and then left an investigation because his daughter needed a ride home. Jack's priorities seemed almost impossibly simple. Emma came first. Everything else waited. After Emma settled in the employee lounge with homework and hot chocolate, Caldwell finally spoke privately with Jack and Ashley. 12 years ago, Jack was assigned to a Marine Aviation Evaluation Unit testing experimental flight systems. Ashley looked at Jack. As a mechanic? Caldwell shook his head. A Marine aviator with advanced systems training. Jack stared through the hangar window. That was another life. Caldwell continued. His call sign was Havoc. Ashley almost smiled. Havoc? Jack sighed. I was 20. And very good, Caldwell said. His expression grew serious. North Star had developed a control architecture designed to manage multiple electrical systems under extreme demand. Jack's evaluation team discovered that one configuration could produce dangerous overheating if installed without specific safeguards. David Reed, then a civilian engineer attached to the project, supported Jack's findings. We recommended the design be withdrawn, Jack said, and we were told it was. Caldwell nodded. The program was closed. Records were classified. Components were ordered removed. Ashley folded her arms. But somebody sold the technology. That is what we need to establish. Jack looked at Caldwell. Why did you think I was dead? The general became quiet. After you resigned from the program, your personnel status disappeared behind a restricted administrative order. Months later, I received notice that you were no longer available for contact. I assumed the worst. You never checked? I tried. Caldwell met his eyes. Every request came back sealed. Jack absorbed that without anger. He had spent 12 years believing Caldwell simply stopped looking. Caldwell had spent 12 years believing there was nobody left to find. Sometimes silence was not abandonment. Sometimes it was something built deliberately between two people. Ashley asked, "Why did you leave?" Jack glanced through the glass at Emma, who was carefully erasing a math problem. Because I learned that being right does not always mean powerful people will listen. Then life gave me someone more important to come home to. Caldwell studied him. You were one of the best pilots I ever evaluated. I am Emma's father now. You can be both. Jack shook his head. I do not need both. Ashley said nothing, but something in her expression softened. Then Caldwell opened an old digital archive on his tablet. There is one more thing. A team photograph appeared on the screen. Jack recognized himself immediately, younger, standing beside Caldwell and several engineers. Near the edge stood David Reed wearing the same faded red aviation band Jack had noticed in Ashley's photograph. Jack leaned closer. David's hand rested on Jack's shoulder. I do not remember this picture. David kept the original, Caldwell said. Ashley stared at her father's face. He never told me about any of this. Caldwell looked at her. Maybe he intended to. At the bottom of the archived image was a handwritten notation from David. Havoc was right. If this design ever returns without the safeguards, stop it before somebody values a deadline more than a life. Ashley slowly looked toward Richard's empty office across the hangar. Jack looked at the date beneath the photograph. It had been written 3 days before North Star officially closed. And suddenly the old program no longer felt like history. It felt like a warning that had taken 12 years to arrive. The next morning, Ashley found Jack in the employee parking lot tightening the loose chain on Emma's bicycle. He was kneeling beside the rear wheel in faded jeans and a gray work shirt, a paper cup of coffee cooling on the pavement. Nothing about him resembled the man General Caldwell had described the night before. You could have told me, Ashley said. Jack glanced up. About the bicycle? About being a Marine aviator. Would it have changed whether my safety report was correct? Ashley had no answer. Jack returned to the chain. That is why. She watched him work for a moment. You helped save my life yesterday. The emergency crew did their job. I helped them understand the aircraft. You knew where I was. I knew where you could get out. Why are you making this sound ordinary? Jack stood and wiped his hands on a shop towel. Because my daughter needs a father more than the world needs another story about who I used to be. The words quieted Ashley. Emma came through the apartment entrance carrying her helmet. Miss Reed. Ashley smiled. Ashley is fine. Emma looked at her father. Is she the lady from the airplane? Jack nodded. Emma considered this carefully, then handed Ashley a blueberry muffin wrapped in a napkin. Dad says people should eat after a bad day. Ashley accepted it with both hands. Your dad sounds smart. Emma grinned. Sometimes. Jack shook his head, but Ashley laughed, and something changed between them. Not romance yet. Something quieter. Respect. Later that afternoon, Ashley called Jack into a conference room at Reed Aerospace headquarters. Caldwell was already there. On the table sat acquisition records dating back 11 years. Ashley opened the first folder. Reed Aerospace purchased North Star's civilian patents through an intermediary company. Jack scanned the pages. Who approved the acquisition? Ashley hesitated. My father. Jack looked up. David. Yes. But there is more. She slid another document toward him. David had required a written restriction stating that the electrical control architecture could not be installed without the safeguards identified during military evaluation. Caldwell leaned forward. So David tried to preserve the warning. Exactly. Ashley turned another page. 5 years later, after David died, the restriction disappeared from the internal engineering summary. Jack's eyes hardened. Who authorized the revision? Ashley placed the final document on the table. Richard Cole's signature appeared at the bottom. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Caldwell finally said, That does not prove intent. No, Jack replied. But it proves he had access. Ashley looked exhausted rather than angry. Richard has worked for my family for 15 years. He taught me half of what I know about this company. Jack closed the folder gently. Then do not decide what he did because you are hurt. Decide from evidence. Ashley stared at him. After everything, you are defending him? No. I am defending the truth. That answer stayed with her. Jack could have used the moment to humiliate the man who had dismissed him. Instead, he insisted on fairness. Quiet dignity was easy when nothing was at stake. It meant something different when revenge was available and a person refused it. Caldwell's phone rang. He listened, asked 2 questions, then ended the call. Investigators recovered the aircraft maintenance authorization history. Ashley straightened. And Jack's 3 warnings are intact. Caldwell looked toward the closed conference room door. So is an internal message sent yesterday morning. From whom? Jack asked. Caldwell turned the tablet around. Richard had written it to corporate engineering less than 2 hours before Ashley boarded the aircraft. The message was short. Miller may be technically correct, but grounding the demonstration will jeopardize the Caldwell partnership. Proceed under existing clearance. Ashley went pale. Jack read the sentence twice. Then his eyes moved to the message beneath it, a reply from an unnamed senior account that had been partially archived. Only 6 words remained visible. David Reed warned us about havoc. Jack slowly lifted his head. Someone inside Reed Aerospace had known exactly who he was before General Caldwell ever arrived. By 9 the next morning, the internal safety hearing had filled the largest conference room at Reed Aerospace headquarters. Ashley sat at one end of the long walnut table. General Caldwell sat beside two independent investigators. Richard Cole arrived with company counsel and the same polished confidence he had worn before the incident. Jack entered last in a plain work shirt, carrying nothing but copies of the reports he had filed. Richard looked at him. This meeting concerns executive safety procedures. Jack pulled out a chair. Then safety should probably be discussed. You exceeded your authority. I reported a problem. You disrupted an approved operation. I reported it 3 times. The room went quiet. Ashley opened a folder. All 3 reports were time-stamped before the demonstration. All 3 were preserved. Richard shifted slightly. And engineering determined the risk was acceptable. One investigator looked up. Engineering never physically inspected the assembly. Richard did not answer. Jack placed his photographs on the table. Heat discoloration. Replacement wiring. The North Star serial plate. David Reed's old safeguard requirement. Each piece was ordinary by itself. Together, they told a story nobody could dismiss. Caldwell spoke next. The component architecture originated in a military evaluation program that identified this exact integration risk 12 years ago. Richard looked toward Jack. And we are supposed to accept that because Mr. Miller suddenly claims to be some former military expert? Caldwell's expression hardened. He did not claim anything. I recognized him. That proves identity, not judgment. Caldwell leaned forward. His judgment is why the original flaw was documented. Jack raised one hand. General. Caldwell stopped. Jack looked at Richard. This is not about what I did 12 years ago. Ashley watched him carefully. Jack continued. A technician reported an abnormal condition. Management received the warning. Somebody decided the schedule mattered more. Richard's voice sharpened. You are simplifying a complex corporate decision. Safety should become simple when the alternative is unnecessary risk. Ashley opened the recovered internal message. Did you write this? Richard read his own words and remained silent. Did you write it? She asked again. Yes. You believe Jack might be technically correct. I believe there was insufficient evidence to cancel the demonstration. So you proceeded anyway. Richard looked around the table. Because millions of dollars and hundreds of jobs depended on that partnership. Jack's voice remained calm. And one person was still sitting inside that airplane when the system failed. Silence returned. No shouting. No humiliation. Just the weight of a decision finally spoken aloud. Ashley closed the folder. Effective immediately, you are suspended from operational authority pending the independent investigation. Richard looked stunned. Jack did not look satisfied. Revenge had never been the point. Caldwell turned toward him. There is something these people should know about Havoc. Jack shook his head. No, sir. Jack, they do not need a story about me. Caldwell studied him. Then what do they need? Jack looked around the room. They need to know that the next person who raises a safety concern might not have a sealed military file or a general sitting nearby. They might be 19 years old on their first week. They might clean the hangar. They might carry a toolbox. Listen anyway. Nobody moved. Ashley lowered her eyes for a moment, then nodded. One of the investigators did the same. The room had finally gone silent for the right reason. Then the information security director entered with a recovered archive. We identified the senior account that replied to Richard's message. Ashley stood. Whose account? The director placed a printed authentication record on the table. It was not an active employee account. Jack read the name and froze. David Reed. Ashley stared at the page. My father has been dead for 6 years. The account was accessed through a legacy automated archive, the director explained. A message he scheduled years ago was triggered when the system detected the word Havoc in a safety report. Caldwell slowly turned toward Jack. Ashley opened the recovered message. It contained only one complete sentence. If Havoc ever finds this technology again, believe him before you believe anyone protecting a deadline. Jack said nothing. Beneath the sentence was an attachment dated 12 years earlier. A photograph. Jack, Caldwell, and David Reed stood together beside an aircraft. On the back, in David's handwriting, were words Ashley had never seen. Jack Miller brought me home when nobody else could. My family owes him more than he will ever ask for. 3 weeks later, the repaired jet remained grounded by choice. Ashley had ordered every aircraft using the North Star-derived architecture inspected before returning to service, even though the decision cost Reed Aerospace millions of dollars. Nobody complained within Jack's hearing. People had learned what silence could cost when it followed the wrong person. Jack returned to his ordinary routine. Coffee before sunrise. Emma arguing about blueberries. His old pickup needing 2 turns of the key on cold mornings. Then Ashley appeared at the maintenance hangar carrying a folder. "I have a job for you." Jack kept tightening a panel screw. "I already have one. Director of Independent Safety Engineering." Jack stopped. "That sounds like meetings." "Some meetings." "How many?" Ashley smiled. "Less than you are imagining. I pick Emma up at 3:15. Then you leave at 2:45. Jack studied her. "No exceptions for executives?" "Especially executives." He finally smiled. "Then we can talk." Respect had grown between them without announcement. Ashley no longer saw a contract technician when Jack entered a room. Jack no longer saw only a chief executive officer surrounded by schedules and authority. They had both discovered something quieter beneath the titles. A week later, General Caldwell visited Jack's apartment on a Sunday afternoon. Emma opened the door and stared at his Marine uniform. "Are you my dad's old boss?" Caldwell glanced at Jack. "No, ma'am. But you are a general." "That is true." Emma frowned. "So how was he not your employee?" Caldwell smiled. "Your father was the man we listened to when everyone else ran out of answers." Jack shook his head. "Thomas?" she asked. Emma looked delighted. "Dad, you never tell me anything interesting." "I tell you to clean your room. That is important." Ashley laughed from the kitchen, where she had somehow been assigned pancake duty. Before leaving, Caldwell handed Ashley the original team photograph recovered from David Reed's archive. "Your father wanted you to have this someday." Ashley turned it over. David's handwriting covered more of the back than the digital scan had revealed. She read silently until her eyes filled with tears. "Jack." He looked up. "There is another line." Caldwell became still. Ashley read it aloud. "If my daughter ever meets Havoc, tell her the truth about why I came home." Jack frowned. "I thought we knew." Caldwell slowly removed his cap. "Not all of it." 12 years earlier, during a remote systems evaluation, David had become stranded when an experimental aircraft developed the same electrical control fault Jack later documented. Jack had recognized the failure pattern, coordinated the recovery procedure, and refused to leave the operation until David was safely back with the team. Jack remembered the day, but he had never known David had a family waiting for him. Caldwell looked at Ashley. "Your father flew home the next morning. He told me his little girl had a school recital." Ashley covered her mouth. "I was 16. He made it?" Caldwell asked. Ashley nodded through tears. "He sat in the front row." Jack looked away, suddenly understanding that an ordinary memory in Ashley's childhood had depended on a day he had almost forgotten. Ashley stepped closer. "You gave me 12 more years with my father." Jack shook his head. "Your father came home because a lot of people did their jobs. You always do that." "Do what?" "Make yourself smaller so everyone else can stand taller." Jack had no answer. Caldwell did. He stood, faced Jack, and raised a formal salute. This time Jack did not look away. He returned it. Later, after Caldwell left, Emma placed the old photograph beside a family picture on the refrigerator. A small envelope slipped from behind the frame. Ashley picked it up. Her name was written across the front in David's handwriting. Inside was a short note dated 6 years earlier, written weeks before his death. Ashley read the final sentence twice, then handed it to Jack. "If you ever meet Jack Miller, do not repay him with money. Give him the one thing his own country never gave him when he walked away, the truth." Beneath the note was a previously sealed personnel release. Jack opened it slowly. His departure had never been classified because he failed, disappeared, or died. David had spent years petitioning to clear Jack's record after discovering that senior officials had buried Jack's safety findings to protect the North Star program. The final approval had been signed 6 years earlier. Jack had been officially cleared all this time. Nobody had ever told him. Emma slipped her hand into his. Ashley stood beside him. Jack looked at the paper, then at the 2 people who mattered more than any uniform or title. For 12 years, he had believed his past was something he needed to leave behind. The truth was simpler. His honor had never been lost. It had only been waiting for someone to finally bring it home.